Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam.
Let me show you something.
Good morning.
You mean you don't trust the police?
Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Today is Thursday, September 1st, 2022. I'm excited to say September because 7 days today, we commemorate the day that the heavens dropped the little egg or delivered egg into the womb. Well, the egg that was delivered into the womb. Anyway, my birthday is a week from today. I was trying to be deep or whatever, but we're going to get ready to jump right in. We have a guest who is been in the media lately for, some interesting reasons. And I will say this, and I got a text from a clinician last night, and she had gave her perspective about, in all of this stuff that's going on. I said we can censor women at the same time in these past few years of understanding that there's been a lot going on, but at the same time, we can question some of the response, the actions, the double-mindedness of appreciating due process. And then when the due process didn't produce what you think should have been done because what's in the media, then you have an issue with due process. So anyway, this is going to be one of my most interesting interviews in trying to be balanced, but then also understanding a lot of the context that Carlos Enriquez set last night when we were talking about this whole situation. And so without further ado, I would like to bring in a good friend and brother, Mr. And it says counselor, but he's here as a candidate today for DA. And so we do have Ricardo Arroyo, who's going to come in and speak with us right now. And so, sir, good morning. Good morning. How are you doing? And I don't mean that in a, how we do. Hey, how you doing, bro? How you doing? No, how are you doing, sir? How are you doing?
It's been difficult. This is all difficult stuff. For the last 2 weeks, I've gone through sort of whirlwinds of different emotions. But mostly right now, I'm just determined because we have a campaign that we're still running till the 6th. And there's a whole lot of folks that are dependent on the criminal justice system that I'm trying to build. And so I've really focused in on that on a personal level. This has been, I wouldn't wish this on anybody, this sort of process of having folks sort of try me by media, having all these different, things that I didn't even know come to light. There's just a lot happening right now. So it's been a lot to deal with.
Ricardo, I would be remiss being familiar with some of the ordinance that you filed around racism being a public health issue. You used to have the Committee for Public Health. And so let me just ask you for a second, from a mental health standpoint, when you talked about a roller coaster of emotions, what is it that you would say, or can you share with us how you are handling that as a man, a brown man? How are you handling the emotions and the mental health and the impact on your mental health? Because, we promote that with men in here in this space. And so if I could just deviate a little bit, and it's not deviation because this is part of it. This is what you're doing.
As best as I can, there's just to hear folks tell it, I'm a monster right now. And to hear other folks tell it, they sort of see the intricacies and nuances to it, and it's different to have people debating you and your life and your morality that way. We're talking about an incident from when I was a junior in high school that was reported and investigated at the time, and so there's just a lot of I'm now standing before you at 34 years old. So there's just a lot of sort of trying to figure out, what happened in my life, how things happened in my life. Just trying to work through that space, but I don't have the luxury of time. And
Yes, sir.
so I got 5 days to an election. This was leaked sort of on purpose to not give me the ability to sit down and really make the time to really explain folks piece by piece what's happening. That's sort of why they crunched it like this. I'm doing my very best. I'm in court today to get the documents, to try and just get this out there with the time we have while people still are making decisions.
Yes, sir.
But from a personal health care standpoint, trying to take moments where I can to just rest my brain and my heart.
Yeah, thank
This
you.
is heavy. This is heavy work right now for me. And I'll tell you, the thing that's really been sort of enlightening is when people are mean, that doesn't impact me the same way as when people are kind. So I can get into a zone when people are being mean to me,
Yep.
being unkind to me, and I can work with that. The things that have caused me to sort of pause and have to collect myself and work through my emotions are when people are very kind. And that's something that I'm going to have to figure out later, but that's been what's like taking me out of my flow when I've tried to get into a flow during this period and just focus on sort of the tasks at hand. The thing that has stuck with me is how much it impacts me when people are kind.
Yes, sir. I want to, and we talked a couple of seconds beforehand, as I do with all guests. I had mentioned to you, and I said it in my opening, is that we can center women and still address this issue. And I am going to ask, you mentioned the incident. There's all this, conjecture and stuff in the paper, and a lot of concern around the disingenuousness of how this all came to be. And so, what is it that you would say to women who, through this coming in the media, to those women, to any women that are now being re-traumatized by incidents that have happened? And there's even, some conversation, if there's disingenuous in this, what is it doing to the women that have been substantiated and there are real issues? And now, because of parts of this conversation, it almost puts that was brought up last night, it almost puts that at risk. And so I have to ask you, what is it that you would say to women? And if you want to directly, address because there's two women in the story.
So
what is it that you would
I
say?
can jump right into that. One of the things I would say, because it's true, is, part of why my heart is so heavy is because I understand the amount of women and men, honestly, who have been sexually assaulted in their lives, and the ways in which these kinds of headlines, these kinds of stories are incredibly triggering to them because of the experiences that they themselves have had. The amount of folks who I've spoken to, who have shared with me in my life their sexual assault story and what happened to them, is heartbreaking. And so for me to know that my decision to run for district attorney with the goal of making a system that works for survivors better, to have this weaponized in this way, and to know it's because I ran, is difficult. It's I don't like pain.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So for me, I ran to mitigate harm, to prevent pain. And so to see this much pain hurts. It hurts my heart. From the standpoint of people making allegations that I won't stand up for women who've been assaulted or men who've been assaulted sexually, that's completely false. Nothing could be further from the truth. I know my truth just like people know their truth. And so when I'm talking about my incident, and I say that because the second woman was very clear that I never sexually assaulted her,
Yes,
and that she did not try to make that accusation of me,
yes,
and came out and cleared that out, actually cleared that up with the Globe in advance. So I don't really consider that an accusation the way I consider this first one,
yes, sir.
an accusation. But when I'm addressing sort of my reality and my truth, it hurts me that some people are hurt by just the fact that we have to have this discussion.
Yes, sir.
And I think part of what has been really painful for me is that the reason we're having this discussion is because files that I never even knew about couldn't get on a FOIA search, or people say, didn't you do Oppo research on yourself? Absolutely. I know every police report that at least I thought I knew, every police report that had ever been filed on me. But these kinds of files are protected. And so a regular search won't find it. A regular officer can't find this. You have to have special clearance to see these files. And so they're protected heavily. They only exist at the Boston Police Department and the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office. They only can be logged into by logging in the time and the person who looked at them. That's why the Boston Police Department was able to say it
wasn't them. And we had the mayor on here look right in the camera and say, Jimmy, it wasn't our office, and there's only one other place where it come from. And so I just want to go back. First of all, you deserve the right that at any point that you need to go off camera for a second, because that is your right in dealing with this. And I know, and even in the comments, there's, what you're hearing in the debate is reflected in here as well. And so I just would be, again, remiss to not have had bring that up. And it's funny because someone last night in the comments asked, where is this? If this, and you talked about truth and an incident from middle school. And if that is this particular woman's, as you said, there's 2 accusations, that is her truth. And so it is, we started off that by saying, what is it that you would say to the women that's their truth, that this incident, or that woman, that this incident happened, and then generally women have dealt with this? Can you just center in on that and speak to them?
I've tried to make sense of a lot of this, because I think one of the things people had a hard time believing was that I did not know about this investigation.
And that is, I'll say to you that is the number one.
Yeah, I get it.
That I've been getting at.
I mean, I don't know how many people here have ever been under investigation and actually had an officer say to them, hey, I just want you to know you're under investigation. I've never heard that before, right? So like, from the standpoint of my life, what I could tell you is I just want to bring people back to 17-year-old me as best I can. And 17-year-old me was dealing with my parents who had been married my whole life, getting a divorce. I was the oldest boy at home, oldest child at home. The impact that had on my mother, and the ways I was trying to manage my senior year when this complaint was made, according to the facts that have been presented to me. My senior year, I was trying to manage all of these sort of things that were happening in my home. And I wasn't being a consistently good student because it wasn't important to me. I don't know if anybody's ever had somebody they care about in a bad spot, but that was my mother at that time.
Yes, sir.
And so I made a determination myself that I would bet on myself. I knew the intelligence I had. I knew who I was as an individual, but my mother needed me in different ways at that point. And so that was a trauma space for me.
Yes, sir.
Back then, it still is. And so I realized when I was with the Globe, just so folks understand how this happened, I got a text from the Globe saying, hey, we got these 2 police reports that allege these things, and we're going to write a story. We'll only talk to you on the record. We'll see you in 2 days within the next 2 days if you're willing to do that. And I said to my team, look, I'm going to go in and speak to them. I don't know what any of this is about. And so I got to see these police reports for the first time in that room. I got to read them for the first time in that room.
Were they redacted at that time?
All they redacted at that time was names that they considered identifying.
Yep.
And perhaps some details. It's hard to tell exactly what was redacted. Some details that they believed were identifying. But essentially, I had to put together a timeline, and I realized that the timeline of my life, I had smushed it. So, for instance, 2005, 2006 was my senior year of high school. I went back to high school, the very same high school, the next year, 2006, 2007. that was because I had failed 2 classes the year before, dealing with everything that was going on at home. And so I think it was science and math. I'm still not a fan of science and math, but I believe those were the 2 classes. And so I had not done well in school. I was juggling the things that were going on at home. There were moments in that period. My mother was coming off of a battle with thyroid cancer. There were things that were happening, things that were being done that had me very concerned about her health and what was going to happen moving forward. And so I remember I failed 2 classes, and I was very ashamed of that because I was trying to juggle what was happening to me at home with school. And I felt like I had robbed my mother of an opportunity to see me walk a stage. And so I re-enrolled, even though people were like, yo, just get a GED and just go to college. Like, you're good. And so I re-enrolled anyway, because I said, I'm not going to, she didn't get to see me cross the stage. I got to go do this. And so I re-enrolled the next year. This is where I smushed it. I just didn't realize the amount of time I was dealing with the things at home. So from 06 to 07, I was there until sometime in the fall. Sometime around January, I just stopped going to school because I didn't have a full school load. And I realized that, this wasn't more important to me than what was happening at home. And so I made a decision to stop so that I could both manage sort of the things that I was going through at that time in my life and my mother. And this is where I smushed it. I thought I took a GED literally like immediately after that. And then I realized I didn't take a GED until the fall of 2007. I didn't take a GED until literally September, October of 2007. And I only realized that because when I was speaking to the Globe and they were trying to sort of timeline my life, because they were trying to find out if I'd ever been disciplined in school in any way, which I hadn't been. They were trying to figure that out. And I sat there and I was like, wait, that's not, I got into college in 2008 and I had just taken the GED. I knew that I got into college waiting for my GED results to arrive because it comes in 2 sets. And so I was like, so I couldn't have possibly done that. And that's when I realized how my brain had sort of compressed that time. The reason I say that is when the Globe showed me this police report, they had a line, not a line that said I was informed of an investigation, nothing of the sort. It was a line that said I had told a police officer I would not speak to them without an attorney. And what I told them is I had no memory of that conversation, because that's true. I have no memory of having a conversation with an officer where I said, I'm not going to speak to you without an attorney. But nothing in that report said that I was told by that officer or anybody else that I was a subject of an investigation, that there was an investigation, that there was a police report filed. When you get into like what my actual day-to-day was, which was going to school, no principal, no guardian, no anybody, no guidance counselor said, hey, these allegations have been made. Can we discuss this? Hey, this has been said about you. Can we discuss this? I was having regular meetings like every 2-3 months with my principal, with my guidance counselor, with some teachers from time to time, because of the way in which they were trying to help me get through my school year with everything that was going on. What some people don't understand, even though he's already written letters to this effect, was that attorney wasn't hired for any criminal complaint. That attorney was hired because my parents trusted them to be a guardian and an advocate for me in school when they themselves were sort of not able to be that for me. And so this person was hired based on the trust that they had with the family, not on any sort of attorney basis. However, there was legal work. Anybody who's dealt with BPS, there is legal work in getting sort of education related things from BPS. One of the things we worked on that took effect later in that school year, like much later, was a independent learning plan where I got tutored at home so that it could fit the calendar that I had, because sometimes I was having very late nights and I wasn't going to school and there were things that were happening. So we tried to accommodate that. And so, that's what that was. And people looked into that and they said, oh, that looks really insidious. Or people looked into the fact that I had to leave to take care of my mother and say, oh, that looks like something insidious. But none of that was insidious. That was just my life at that time. I overcame a lot of things to be the person I am sitting here right now with you. And so when I saw this report, I was stunned. And, I know the Globe says there was an 8-month investigation into that. All of that investigatory product was missing. So all the Globe got was the police complaint. They didn't get any of the investigatory product. They didn't get any of what the detectives who were assigned to this case said, what the assistant district attorneys who were assigned to this case said. All of that information is missing. That's the information I'm going to court to get. And I know that what they found was that these claims were unfounded. And so from the standpoint of, being a person of color, being a public defender, understanding how easy it is to be charged, I think one of the things that has been really difficult for me is that a lot of this conversation has not been, do we think he did it or not, but about whether or not I knew I was investigated or not. And that's a weird thing for me right now, to be honest, with where they've gone. And I did not know about it. The people very close to me know that I did not know about this. And so from the standpoint of, how I move right now, I'm trying to move in a way that is respectful of every party that's involved in this. They didn't ask for this. This was leaked illegally. So from the standpoint of how I operate, I've been very careful in how I want to talk about this, because you don't have to take my word for it. You don't have to take somebody else's word for it. Adults, police officers, district attorneys looked into this and they made their own conclusions. And I'm trying to get those conclusions to the people so that they can see what those conclusions were. And if they still want to go after me on that, that's fine. But ultimately, because I can't change that, I can't change how people are going to come at me or think about things. I can only present the truth as I know it to be. I can only present the facts and paperwork as I know it to be. And so that's really that. I don't want to keep going because I know you gave me one question. I just wanted to be as thorough as I could with that.
I was kind of intentional here, Ricardo, and at the risk of some folks, fans or not, or Java fam or not, that allow you an opportunity to sort of, away from the media, sort of give your perspective, because it has been very interesting to watch the expeditious moving of some people to over criminalize and set their heels in, guilty before proven innocent. And according to a lot of this paperwork, there were no findings, if that's the right terminology. And so
no, it's not that there were no findings, that they found it to be unfounded.
So you're a lawyer. Just give me 30 seconds of no findings and unfounded, the difference.
No findings means that perhaps you investigated and you couldn't prove something, right?
Okay.
Unfounded means there's no basis in fact. And
so both cases were unfounded.
So the first case was unfounded. The second case was a police report that was about a paragraph long.
Okay. And is the second case in reference to the woman that came out in the
woman who came out was very clear about has been very clear that she did not appreciate the way in which her records were leaked.
Okay, this
has been very clear about the fact that she never in her life has thought that I had done anything to her or assaulted her in any way. Was clear with that to the Globe before. I'll address this too. People said, hey, how did you know to reach out to her? And so let me just tell you what happened. I'm in this room. I get this police report put in front of me by the Boston Globe, and they keep asking me about a party on Geneva Ave, because the paragraph, it's only a paragraph. It says I was at a party with Ricardo Arroyo on Geneva Ave. So they keep asking me about this party on Geneva Ave. Now, I just told you 2006, 2007, like those are really difficult years for me. So I reached out to multiple individuals who I used to know back then. People.
So let's just clarify something I'm hearing here. You didn't, because some of the
idea that people got is like, I was like this person.
Zero in and knew who it was.
No, that's not what happened. And so basically what happened was I only hung out with a set of people. I didn't have contact information for all of those people. Some of those folks I still had contact information and I called them. Some of those folks I had to reach out to on Facebook. And so that's what happened. She was not the first person I even contacted. And so what ended up happening is I said something along the lines of, hey, we haven't spoken in a long time. Can you call me when you get a chance or something like that? And I threw my number in there and I got a phone call from her. And she said, I'm so sorry this is happening. I already told the Globe you had nothing to do with this. That's how I found out. It wasn't that I knew. It wasn't that I guessed. I didn't even ask her that. She just came on the phone call, said, I'm so sorry this is happening. I told the Globe already you had nothing to do with it. I told the Globe before today that you had nothing to do with it. And the Globe reported that. They said that Tuesday, the 16th, that she had said to them, I don't associate Ricardo with anything that happened to me as a youth. And so I don't know how you work around that. She'd already told them that. And so when I finally was able to speak with her, when she called me, a lot of things started to make sense about what was happening with that particular report. That report never said Ricardo Arroyo was reached out to. That report didn't say anything about me other than my name. So from the standpoint of that report, they don't even make the only person alleging, this is where it gets really insidious. The only person alleging that I was informed of that investigation is the actual Suffolk County District Attorney's Office spokesperson, who told the Globe that all suspects are informed of an investigation or something like that, which is untrue and is ethically in violation. There was a whole Twitter thread about the rules of ethics and professional responsibility on commenting, but it's also not true. I was never informed of that. I didn't even know that existed. The Pole police report was a paragraph. That's why that woman in particular has endorsed my candidacy, has been so loud about this. But that, I just want to clear that up, because some people have been asking, how did you know? I didn't know. That's not a thing. When I gave this person with other people, I gave the same exact message.
It was multiple. If I'm hearing you correctly, you did a reach out to multiple people.
Yeah,
when your brain started going back to unpack.
Yeah,
that
and most of them were men. I was reaching out to people I was hanging out with at that time to say, hey, do you all remember a party on Geneva Ave? Like, do y'all remember anything about this? And as you would expect, most people who reached out, who got in touch with me, said, I don't remember anything about parties from like 2007, right? So like, but she reached back out to me and told me immediately, hey, I'm sorry you're going through this. I spoke to the Globe. This is wrong. All of that happened in the same day, but I didn't know that it was this person. I had simply been given information. All of their questions were about, do you know about a party on Geneva Ave? Where were you at a party on Geneva Ave? What, April 2007, were you at a party? And so I said, let me actually, I don't remember any of this. So I have to reach out to folks.
This is going back 15, 17 years in some cases, in either case.
That's 15 years. The first one goes back to when I was 17. And so that's where I was in that moment, was just trying to make sense of this. I don't know how to explain to somebody, like if I told you, hey, Jimmy, I got this police report that says you were part of a manslaughter and I need you to come in and talk to me about it. Like that, it's so out of body to get a call like that. And then to get given these details, I immediately was just like, what is this even? And so I was just trying to reach out to folks who I knew from back then. And she happened to be one of those folks. And she reached back out to me and said, I'm sorry this is happening. I've never accused you of things. I don't believe you've ever done anything to me. I know you haven't. And that's why she was willing to do that statement. But also just for folks who want to say, well, I know the Globe has tried to act like, and my opponent has tried to act like there was some kind of intimidation there. This person is a friend. This person has endorsed my candidacy. Okay. And so this idea of this witness intimidation aspect is so off. But it's also one of the things that really hurt me was that she told me that she did have an incident in her life, a sexual assault incident in her life. And that this was triggering all of that for her. Yep. And so, that hurt me. Because I like, how do you, obviously I didn't leak these files, but I know they were leaked because I ran. And so this person was going through distress because she had an incident in her life that this was flashing her back to. And she told me straight, I'm not going to let them do this to you because I know you didn't do anything to me. And so I got to make that clear. And so she wanted to do that because it was important to her. And she'd already done that. But I knew that she was also in pain because of another incident that she told me about that I'm not going to disclose for her. But she had told, there was a whole investigation that happened on that one. There was a suspect in that. There was a thing. Like, she had gone through this whole process as a youth. And this was really messing with her.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. I've tried to, and this is a space where we allow for debate and difference of opinion. But Mr. Donnie, when I see that the mothers and some of these folks are having to debate with you in a manner and call you out and tell you what this platform is, brother, fall back, have an opinion, but asserting this stuff. So I'm so sorry, Ricardo.
I mean, I can't see the comments.
You're not. The other thing, I again have to find another word, but that young woman came out, and we know that in this there are two women. Since then, the Globe put out an article, I think the evening before yesterday, what is it that you would say to that woman that is alleging that something definitely did happen, and she's so fearful? You know, and if I got it right, because it is, I'll be honest, between the globe, and it has been a little confusing trying to, you know, keep it together. And so what is it that you would say in response to the article, to the woman that came out kind of opposite of what the last young woman you referred to, that this did happen? And if he get, I'm sorry, I don't want to put that, any gesture like that is not directed toward the woman, it's directed toward the media. But what is it that you would say in response to the article that came out the other night?
I want to be very clear. Nobody should be in fear of me. I'm never going to harm any individual, period. So I don't, you know, that hurt. And I have been sitting with that, trying to figure out sort of the relationships that I've had as a youth, as a minor, the relationships I've had as an adult. There's been a lot of soul searching on that. And what I would just say is, you know, the accusations weren't a physical force. They weren't that I had physically harmed this individual. And I have been sitting with, and I'm still sitting with, sort of trying to relive every conversation, every sort of interaction. But I know what my truth is, and I don't want to get into a space where I'm litigating this. And so part of the way in which I see her pain, and I wish there was a way to be restorative about this. And maybe at some point there will be a way to be restorative. And I believe in restorative justice. I believe in looking at that and doing things as we can, because I've seen the impact of it. But right now, what I really want to make clear is what the truth is as it was found to be by people who looked into this. Because usually when you get these kinds of stories, it's a new accusation, or it's something that's new and hasn't been seen yet, and has not been looked into yet. And this was looked into by adults in professional capacities. And I think it's important for the conclusions that they reach to be public as well. And, you know, I do believe that people can have one interaction and both see that interaction very differently. To
this point that, and I referenced to it last night with, and his name is there. And so Thaddeus asked the question last night when this came up in the, you know, kind of Boston Poly Unfiltered, is that he asked, and Carlos gave it credence, that can that woman have a truth? And can you have a truth in the fact that there was no physical, you know, assault or altercation? Is that, you know, did something happen, and how that, two truths and facts are facts, as Carlos is saying, and sort of on the thing of there can be two truths. And so I did have
that's kind of where I'm at, right? I want the facts to be seen, but I also understand that two individual people can have a conversation and walk away from that conversation feeling differently about it or understanding it differently. I understand that's a human thing. And so, you know, part of what I'm asking people to do is to just allow me to get these files and to present you with the facts as they were found to be then. And then, you know, in terms of the interpersonal work that this individual, if they cared to, and myself could do in a restorative space, that's a conversation that I'm certainly open to at some point. But I think from the standpoint of like making clear that there are facts here, and that the facts found at that time that this was unfounded is incredibly important, because we're talking about, you know, I can have a different idea of how I felt about a conversation with you, but when you start to involve this was criminal or this was not criminal, those are very different things. That facts matter quite a bit.
Gotcha.
And so I understand people's truths. I'm always going to let people speak their truth. I believe in that. But I also believe in facts, and believing in facts leading the way to what that truth should be or could be or was. And so that's why I'm fighting so hard to make sure that there's nothing hidden here from the public, because we know that when they leak these files, they purposefully leak them without the investigatory product.
And we you know, here's a little bit of Polly here, but we understand and know that how this was leaked and the leaking of it after you've ran for city council 2 times is very interesting to a lot of people, the timing around this and whatnot, and also the lack of some response of some people. I do have to, this is a little bit Polly petty or petty Polly, but the basis of it is all rooted in racism. City council hearing yesterday. Your perspective, and with all due respect, balancing that, we have to name that a lot of the area where it got emotional is really not so much based with all due respect to you and Kevin. This is bigger than y'all. This is around principle and policy, where people are concerned who is going to carry out the implementing or putting back into place or continue what we found out that Rachel Rollins did when she went in from 18 across the country, when we found out what the difference the DA makes. And so I only say, and I'll let you interject before we go to city council, but this is bigger than you and Kevin, with all due respect. It is. It's about who we see as representing where we would like to see the criminal justice system or criminal legal system entreat Black and brown people. I'm sorry, you didn't spark something up here, but go ahead.
No, I'm just, this wasn't an accident. Like, anybody who thinks that these files that I've gone my whole life not knowing about, that have never been shared with the public in any way, get leaked a week and a half or 2 weeks before a primary, right after a transit police scandal, where there was a cover up by the sitting DA and sort of, this solicitation of money from the individual, the attorney of the officer who they were agreeing to drop a case for, and then a donation from that officer. I think folks, and that was in the papers for like a week, and then all of a sudden these things leak. I think people have to understand that none of this is an accident. I mean, we know what this is. The Boston Police Department has already made an investigation. I called for an independent investigation into this leak, which, just so folks understand, this isn't like some small thing. I can't even get these documents legally. And I have to, like, I'm in court right now appealing a decision to not give me these documents, even though my name is in them. If you leak this document, it gets you a year of jail time. That's what it gets you. And so we're talking about a criminal act. I asked for an independent investigation into who leaked these files. Kevin Hayden has neither agreed to an independent investigation or even done a sham investigation into himself, like he did on the transit police, where he said, "Oh, I'm investigating myself."
Ricardo, you'll respect this here because Kevin's not here, and I got to be trying to,
Yeah, that's fine. But I'm just saying that's not a real investigation. You can't investigate yourself. That's not how that works.
Did you sip? Did you really just sip after that statement?
I have to sip on that because I needed water. I need to hydrate. Because it's sort of, he couldn't even do that on this one though. And so like I think what your common sense tells you is that one individual had a motive, one individual benefits from this. We're 2 weeks from an election. It's never come up before. It's actually a criminal act. The woman who came forward was very clear that she was being harassed by a detective named Brian Gill, who she believes is associated with his campaign. He's a private investigator. He's not a detective anymore. And so this is a private entity. And so there's some real questions about how this all happened and why this all happened. But from the standpoint of sort of what this is being bigger than me, I've always said that, what Rachel did, and you see her right now, she's under investigation right now. Right. And so from the standpoint of the actual investigation into this, or what this is about, what this is really about at the end of the day is who's going to hold powers that be accountable, who's going to push policy that better impacts. Like, this is about all of our babies. This is about all of our communities. I don't think there's a single person of color who would tell you with a straight face that our justice system works for them right now or works for our communities. They can't say that because it's not true. I was a public defender in there on hundreds of people. I can tell you that's not true. This system does not work for us. And so the policies that you have to create to make this system work for us are a threat to people who this system has worked for, and for people who have been benefited from and support and push policies that don't work for us. And so when we talk about this stuff, I always tell folks, I said it yesterday, I had a debate yesterday where I made it very clear. This is really a question about how we want to move forward. Are we moving forward with sort of the reforms and trying to shape this justice system into a justice system that works for people of color, for people dealing with substance use disorder, for people who are poor, for people who are dealing with mental health illness? If we're going to do that, you have to do some real reimagining, some real policy work, some real cultural change. And that is threatening to folks who are very, very happy with status quo. And so I think there's a whole aspect to that is true. Even when you get to the council, which we can touch differently because I see you want to jump in here. But that's what this is.
It is. And so just to close that part out is that we've and again, Sharon Cornelius said, and as I chimed in a little bit before, Kevin, I will say to everyone, Kevin was on a few months ago, so he's been on as well. But Donnie's not here when there are inferences made to what's going on with him, or Kevin. I said Donnie because he's still popping up in here. So anyway, that is the foundation of all of this. From Charleston, what happened with Jews will not replace us and all that other stuff they was chanting, and the undercurrent of that is very here and active. And Boston is unfortunately has some deep roots in some undercurrent racism and then the obvious overt racism. And so this is the foundation of what I believe I saw yesterday come to a head. Now, was it the energy of sides, quote unquote, the side to which you referred? And then the other side, I believe, are those that see a opening in the window that we're going to get some true equitable response to the legal system based on some of the policies that you promote and perpetuate from Rachel Rollins. And so as you were sitting there, sir, how would you describe what was the room like? The fact that they had to shut it down, a man basically physically assaulted a woman out in the hall. Like, Ricardo, what was that?
A lot is what that was. But I'll just say one of the things that people, so if you listen to the way that this meeting was written up, allegedly it was all about me. And the reality is, Councilor Fernandez Anderson has been fantastic. Councilor Mejia has been fantastic. Councilor Lara has been fantastic at just speaking truth on this stuff. But this wasn't about me in that way. What people don't understand is this has always been bigger than that. And what they were speaking to was the fact that they saw a situation here where I have not violated any laws, not broken any laws. I have not broken any city council rules. I'm not currently under investigation by anybody. And so for them to suspend me for 60 days, I just want to be, and not from the council, but from my committee chairmanships.
So you're suspended. Let's get that clarified. You're suspended from council chairman.
At least that's how he talked about it. I'm suspended from council chairmanships for the next 60 days.
What about the vice presidentship? Right, vice presidency.
Same thing.
60 days.
Well, then in 60 days, he'll assess, I believe is what he said. But here's the thing. 60 days is exactly the amount of time we have to create and present a redistricted map. That's the exact amount of time. And you have the proof and evidence of the importance of redistricting because you have seen how the council has changed and how the council looks and how the council has been more.
The policies it's asserting. Go ahead. Sorry.
And the policies and the conversations that we are having on the floor because of the work of, Ayanna, my brother, Tito Jackson, 10 years ago.
Chuck Turner.
Pushing for this map 10 years ago that we have right now. This map lasts for 10 years. And so what you saw was a very, I believe, accurate understanding that this wasn't really about what you've seen in the news for 2 weeks. This was about a conservative part of the council seeing an opportunity to take power, and they did so. And they used this sort of everything that's happened in the last 2 weeks as an excuse. And that's what folks were upset about, is that sort of power grab, that decision to change the redistricting chair, to change the government operations chair, to do that on no rules being broken, no laws being broken. I'm not under investigation by anybody, including the city council. All of those things sort of culminated to a head yesterday because it's basically like, I'm not going to let you say or see things in my face that I know are not true. And Tanya and Councilor Fernandez Anderson, Councilor Lara, Councilor Mejia wanted to be really clear that they saw what was happening here.
And they called it out.
It had very little to do with me specifically and everything to do with how this body is trying to sort of do power grabs in ways that are very transparent. And I think from the standpoint of the public, I've spoken out against this. I think people need to understand that the reality is this is incredibly important. We're talking about redistricting for the next 10 years. We're talking about how we build and grow these seats. And I will just say, because I've said it clearly, we've had multiple hearings already for redistricting. The two most impacted districts are Ed Flynn's and Frank Baker's, because they've had the most population shifts. And so those are the districts that have the most change. And those are the districts that
and will diversify.
Yes. Well, depending on how it happens.
Well,
one of the things that happened on the floor, which didn't really get reported, was there was this moment talking about Mass and Cass in that area, Clifford Park, where Tanya Fernandez Anderson said, if I get this area into my district, I will do ABC, right? That was basically the context. And Frank Baker yelled out, that's not going to happen. And so there's all of this sort of undercurrent of how these lines are going to be drawn and who's going to benefit. And when I say benefit, the city doesn't benefit when we don't have inclusive, diverse districts. We don't benefit from that. Individuals might benefit from that, but the city doesn't.
The power, the perceived systemic
controlled power benefits from that. And so, just to be clear, the council stuff was just a seized opportunity. The stuff that was happening in the audience and all of these things, the anti-vaxxer crowd was there.
The anti-Michelle, the anti-woman of color, the anti-progression, the anti.
We also had survivors there and people from our community there in support. And, unfortunately, several of them, I believe, were assaulted by an individual there. Women were assaulted by a man.
It's on camera.
It's on camera. I believe there's going to be charges.
Why? I'm sorry. I'm confused because one of the ones that assaulted was the one that lunged after the mayor out at a coffee hour. And so why would they even allow
Mr. Councilor Louis Jen? He chased her out of he went after her very aggressively at the Hyde Park coffee hour. So he's had some moments.
Listen, for me yesterday, it seemed like there was a coming to a head. Some people have even asserted the council after yesterday is not going to be able to get anything done because of what was identified and as far as this sort of split or whatever. And I really agree with you that the centuries, 100 years old power systems that are in place. Boston has a very interesting, the whole reason why y'all don't have that much power and it's turned over and you got to go to the state is based in racism, because white folks up back in the years ago didn't want no black folks getting well, actually, let me change that. The Brahmins and those descendants found, and it's so interesting that more Irish were getting elected over in South Boston, and they were afraid and they turned the power over to the state house. And so I don't understand, when the incidents of racism and busing happened, y'all went through the same thing we did with these descendants of the Mayflower. Little trivia, extra history there, but it just behooves me that they're responding to it doesn't, because they're afraid. We talk about the browning of America. There's a browning of Boston that's going on, and they just are trying to hold on to so much power that they feel is slipping through their hands, and it probably ain't slipping. We're going in trying to take it. This ain't after dark.
So decades of work, and I just want to be clear: we represent everybody, and part of the fear here is that the old power structure didn't, and there's this fear that just because the power structure is now changing race or gender or faith, that they are going to do to us what has been done in the past.
That's their own guilt. Sorry.
That's a fabric of that. This idea that, that we'll only look out for communities of color. We'll only talk to people of color. We'll only provide help and access to people of color. And it's based off of what we have experienced as communities of color, and that they know we have experienced, of having leadership that does not look like us, does not come from our communities, and does not come to us in any way, shape, or form of resources or help or assistance. And there's a fear of that. And I think the fact of the matter is, we're going to continue to make progress because we've come too far to just come this far. But the reality is what happened at yesterday's council meeting was a bunch of counselors of color just saying, look, I'm not going to let you do this without me calling it out. I'm not going to just say what this is. And if you don't like me just saying what this is, then that's on you. But I'm going to say what this is. And that's bigger than me. That goes to all of the things that these individuals represent for themselves and for the districts in the city that they represent. And I think it was important that they had that moment. And so to share that and to speak to that and to put that into existence. I've always said what isn't named can't be fixed. And so what's not acknowledged can't be fixed. And so that's where we are.
One thing, if you can do, and I know you're here as a candidate, but one thing that concerned me is that I don't want what happened yesterday to be used as a weapon against everyday regular citizens. We already got concerns that they do the hearings during the day and regular normal 9 to 5 people can't go, but I don't want this to be used as to barring citizens from going to city council hearings.
I don't think you're going to see that. I don't think you're going to see that.
All right.
I mean, if we could allow the COVID sort of denying anti-vaxxer crowd to show up to every meeting for months, I don't see why they would do that now.
Okay.
I would certainly stand against it.
Yes, sir. Ricardo, I appreciate you, sir. I appreciate that you were willing, to come in. Everybody knows, and up front, you've been in here before. We do have a rapport and relationship and whatnot, but there were some things I had to ask you about and center.
I think that makes sense. And I just want to be clear. I've tried to answer every single person who's had these kinds of questions. I've tried to make myself as accessible and as transparent as possible because I'm running for district attorney right now because I believe in a better justice system. I believe that the way we do things is wrong. I believe in due process. I believe in people receiving due process. I believe in the presumption of innocence for individuals in courts. I believe in that. I believe in that firmly. I believe in giving people, if our systems are to work, then we have to believe in the basic principles and foundational tenets of those systems while reforming them to actually stay true to those foundational principles, which is often what does not happen. The amount of times that my clients walked into these courts and they were presumed guilty and they were treated like they were guilty from beginning to end in ways that impacted and harmed them mentally and harmed them financially and harmed them physically and emotionally. All of those things are, and that's not to say that every individual who comes into our courtroom isn't guilty, but we have a presumption of guilt when it should be a presumption of innocence. And we treat, and I will just be clear, sometimes that presumption was entirely based on how rich or wealthy that individual was.
Or how the person looked, or the amount of melanin, or
the race of that individual. And that's the system we are walking into. I'll give you one stat. Chief Justice Gantz, who's no longer with us, may he rest in peace. His last work was on racism in our court system. And one of the things that is horrifying that's in there is that 75% of sentences for juvenile offenders were impacted by whether or not that individual was a person of color. They got worse sentences and worse treatment 75% of the time, 75% more if they were a person of color, if they were a youth of color. And so this is not a system that sees people of color the same way it's able to see other individuals. And I want to make it a system that works through policy, through structured regulations, through culture change, that does that work. And I think that's bigger than anybody here. That's bigger than me. That's bigger than anybody here. Yeah. Because what you are talking about is a justice system that touches 100,000 people in a term, 25 to 20,000 cases a year. It's about 100,000 people, not counting survivors and victims. You could add that number in there, not counting the families of both, not counting our communities as a whole. And so the impact of this role is major. It's a massive, massive role. And what we are really dealt with and what we are really dealing with, and it's just clear, is that there are stark differences in policy and how we plan to lead this office moving forward. And so I ask people to think about that, to think about the impact on themselves, to think about the impact on community when they make their vote.
Ricardo, thank you, sir. Thank you. I would encourage you not to go back, just like some people tell us in the paper and whatnot. Don't go to the comments. Don't go in the comments here. Just go ahead and do what you need to do as far as the case and getting the paperwork, and hopefully the clarity that you seek can come out, before tomorrow, because the holiday weekend and folks, and that. And that, how did we wind up getting the election day on the 6th with all the extra budget that's going to come with paying people who's preparing on the 5th on Labor Day?
The Secretary of State sets the date.
We're going to leave that. Okay, we're going to leave that alone.
You can have a different.
That's a whole nother. That's a whole nother conversation. Ricardo, again, I appreciate you, and stay truthful. My belief is that you were, honest and truthful here, and it isn't as I'm stepping into this media space, whatever, trying to balance and understand, and also as a brother, as a son, understanding and observing, what's going on with women. It's interesting to balance, but thank you for being transparent. Thank you for your vulnerability, and giving us also some education about what that office is supposed to do. And so I'll let you go. We were on a little half an hour more than what we were supposed to be. So I'm gonna go pay some bills.
I said, how long is it gonna be? And
I said 9:30.
He said 9:30. Here we are at 10. But I appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
I'm always gonna be. I lead with my heart, and so I'm always gonna be as transparent as I can with folks, as honest as I can with folks. I realize other people sometimes find pieces in the things that I say that are relevant for them, and so I'm always going to be my truest self with y'all. And I appreciate you. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And please give Muhammad my best for making this happen, the staff there on the campaign end. Thank you both so much. And folks, stay on for a couple of seconds after Ricardo leaves. All right. So that was an interesting interview. Yeah, it was interesting. All right, folks, it's 10 o'clock. And so today is Thursday. It's my Friday, but I'm not going to give a whole bunch of commentary on the interview because that'll have us here another 15 minutes. Thank you all who are chiming in and saying great show and things like that. Thank you so much. It's so interesting to see the word show. I found myself saying the couple of people, the Java with Jimmy show. But I wanted to just remind you, I haven't looked yet, but I need to see how many tickets are left. But please don't forget to join us this evening at 6 p.m. at Dudley Cafe. You can go and register here. Please register so we know the amount of people that's coming or know if we're, at capacity or whatever. So you can go to lowercase jwj.info/YHJ9122 to register for this evening's live recording. We're going to have a conversation with Naisha Deed about her work in the space of mental health and also talk a little bit about her story and how she focuses on not only her mental health, but being a liaison to those that are trying to get into therapy. We're going to, of course, talk with Dr. Alabre. And then we're going to talk with Dr. Ronke, who is a psychiatrist. And we're going to, and she keeps it very real. And so we're going to talk about the impact of everything that's going on, how it impacts our health, and then the sort of mindset we need to stay focused on our health, routine and preventative care, and also staying up with our mental wellness. And so that's taking place tonight. I don't have any other announcements. Monday, we'll be on Monday. We'll be on Monday for a few minutes on the holiday. And then next week on the 6th will be the live recording we're doing tonight. We will cast that next Tuesday for your Healthy Java. Dr. Alabre and I will come in toward the end and answer any questions on next Tuesday. And I think that's it. I can always tell when the interviews are deep and good because I'm exhausted. So as the old church folks used to say, the virtue that leaves. Charlotte, good morning. Good to see you in the room. Rachel, good morning. We're going to talk shortly. I'll check in with you. I just need a little quick break. No, Miss Teresa, I don't need anything arriving at the doorstep of Dudley Cafe at 5:59 p.m. That's not and Naisha's a part of it too. No, we're good. Miss T, thank you so much for always. Hey, Tashad. Yeah, it is. And I did have, thank you, Uncle, and coming from you, because you'll tell me if you thought otherwise. I did have Kevin on before, and the interesting thing, of course, it wasn't Pulse when the story broke. So I will name that. And Ricardo did make reference to the MBTA thing. And I did, y'all saw, I was trying to chime in, and then I did state that Kevin wasn't here. Sharon did too. And so, there's not time to get Kevin. And I'm not going to bring Kevin on to talk about this. Ricardo is the one, and these women are the ones that are impacted. And so And Kevin probably wouldn't come on. So anyway, let me just say this. I don't want any, and a few people know this. And I'm hospitable when I see him in the community and whatnot. But when Ricardo talked about clients coming in and the way they were treated by the ADAs and whatnot, please remember some 12, 15, maybe a little longer years ago, I was a youth worker and would accompany these young people to court. Kevin and I had some interesting dealings. And so I had already had a point of context when I heard about this. And so I just want to name that this isn't just about, you know, jumping on a bandwagon of anything. No, I got my own points of reference. So, and the final one, of the most recent one is, even though he said he would on the show, continuing what Rachel Rollins started, all of it hasn't continued. So Mama Java says, sorry, baby. She had to get ready for a doctor's appointment. Ma, hope you are well and just follow up. All right. And Alana, I put AP in the comments, but good to see you in the room. All right, folks, I'm going to say this too. We do better together. There's power in numbers. We are as strong as the weakest link. Some context there. If we present and expose those that we think, and I haven't always done well with this, those that we think are a weak link, do you not think the enemy would go in at the weakest link and attempt to break it? So, in all things where we are fighting for an improved quality of life for Black and brown people around any issues, we do better together. Have I always done it? I'm going to keep saying that, right? No, but thank God for maturity and evolution. It behooves us to try to, when there are relationships, to not go public when there is disagreement, but attempt to sidebar, phone call, text, meet me, break bread. We do better together across the board. I just thought I needed to put that out there this morning. So, Thankful Thursday. Let's leave with some thankfulness. Everybody that's in the comments and opinions and all this other stuff, let's be intentional and put one word in the comments for which you are thankful this morning, and we'll get y'all hold me up sometimes when I'm ready to go. I'm gonna hold y'all up. Put one word in the comments around thankfulness, please. I'll wait. Hey, Lasagna. Oh, Miss T, don't start. I knew somebody was going to do that. Ma, at 51 years old in a week, my mother still does stuff that make me sound like a 14-year-old. Ma. Woo, Reggie. Deacon Reginald. Paula said her children. Dina said for having her own mind. Yes, don't forget Black Joy next Friday. Today's Thursday. Next Friday, 6 to 9 p.m. at the ICA. Thaddeus said grace, peace, family. Grace, peace, joy, and love, family. Naraki said thankful for you. Come on, y'all. Go with somebody else. Tashad said family. You all day. Alana, I'm not messing with y'all. Come on, y'all. Y'all got other thankfulness. You're absolutely right, Jimmy. Thank God for restoration. For that right there, Alana. Susie, you're able to make it. Are you back? Able to make it on. Thankful for what you're bringing to the community. Happy birthday. Camille, what's up, homie? Thankful for community. Sharon, you a mess. She says she's thankful for Charlotte. You and Heidi gonna need to put a watch party together for Java with Jimmy. I would love to for two queens to put a watch party together for Java with Jimmy over some football. That would be awesome. My mother says she's great, thankful for her babies. My free mocha frappe. I ain't messing with y'all. Pastor says she's thankful for truth. All right. Naraki said for breath. Lord have mercy. Sister Debbie said for support. All right. I'm glad we intentionally are going out with some thankfulness. It's been a heavy week. This was a heavy session, to be quite honest with you. I will also say this, that if you were someone who was watching and has been through this, seek out some resources. You can go to Your Pure Spark. They have some resources around mental health, therapists and whatnot. But I know for some that this conversation has brought up some things that maybe even you have not thought about in some years. And so talk with someone that you trust, and talk with someone that you trust, because even in this, there's some hearsay that one of the victims was rightfully so talking about it and it got infiltrated or whatever. So talk to someone you trust, and don't sit with this memory and let it, what the old folks would say, fester, in talk about it and talk about your truth. All right. I just needed to name that. And I wish I had, if somebody, I don't know if Keys is in the building. If somebody has a resource that moves in this space, and maybe I need to get Shaquira, from Shaquira's story up here, and maybe we have a conversation about sexual abuse, so we can share some resources, because this incident did bring that up, and we can't nullify that is a real issue. Wow, so is racism. So I'm off of here. The last 2 days have been long, Jesus. Or last night, me and Carlos were supposed to do 90 minutes and we did 3 hours. Whoa. All right. Sister Soraya said, thankful for God opening my eyes to be able to be here with you wonderful people. Auntie Java said international. I'm not messing with you, Auntie. All right. Keys, put some stuff together. We can talk about it when we, or you can post it. You know, do what you need to do. All right, guys, I'm really getting off of here. I'm starting to stutter. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody, and we'll see some of you tonight at 6 p.m. at Dudley Cafe. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Be safe this Labor Day weekend. And shout out to all the laborers. And I'm out of here, y'all. Have a wonderful weekend. Peace.